Good morning, everyone. My name is Charlene Gray. I'm the president of Early Child Educators of BC, but I'm also a member of the leadership cohorts. I'm from leadership cohort number 2. And so this is all part of the learning that we do when we take our leadership cohorts. So I'm pleased to be moderating today. I'm really grateful that these leaders have chosen to come up and sit in front of all of you, which is a daunting task. I can tell you that it is. And they're going to be sharing a little bit about their leadership journey with you. Each one is an individual and unique, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from them. When we're done, we also have an opportunity for you to ask questions, so I really hope that you do. We have a question jar here that we hope that you're going to be putting some questions in. The way the panel is going to work is that I'm going to introduce each one of the panel members, and then they're going to have a chance to give us a little bit of a synopsis about who they are and what they do and what message that they would like to share with you. We have microphones that we're going to pass back, so I was wondering where those were. Thank you. We also have one of our panelists who is Skyping in. I think her picture is going to be up on the screen, I'm hoping, Nancy. So, and we're also, again, being videotaped, so just remember that's happening this morning. Okay, so I'll see if I can get this right, because I just met some of these women this morning. So I'm really pleased. I'll just tell you who they are, and then I'll introduce them one at a time. So with us today on the screen will be Nancy Dumais, and Nancy is from the Terrace branch. She's on the ECEBC executive there, and she's from cohort number 5 of the leadership. We also have Courtney Dion, who is an ECEBC board member, and she's from the 2017 leadership cohort, and she's from Vernon. Jennifer Finley is an early learning coordinator from Salmon Arm. We have Leanne Mavidi, she's the AC Leadership 2017 participant, again from Vernon. We have Leola McMillan with us from the North Okanagan, and she's on our branch executive. And we also have Cindy Page, who's an EC instructor at Northern Lights College. So I'd like to welcome you, ladies, and thank you so much for sharing.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Finley. I'm the Early Learning Coordinator in School District 83, which is the North Okanagan Shuswap. I want to thank Friday Bailey, I'm not sure where Friday is, but for roping me into this. And I'm also fighting kindergarten germs. I'm a part-time kindergarten teacher as well. And I had no voice on Sunday, so I'm glad I have a little bit of a voice today. So I'm hoping I can make this through without having a major coughing attack in front of you. So just a little bit about my leadership journey. I started off at the end of high school. I really wanted to be a classroom teacher, and so I got my B.Ed and became a teacher in Winnipeg. And then my future husband and I, we moved out to British Columbia. I started working in a 2-room school in a very small community in the Chilcotin, and worked as a teacher for a couple of years. And then I had a really strong mentor at one of my schools who suggested that I take my master's in education. And at that time, I was still young and pretty new to teaching. I thought, oh, I just finished university. You know, I'm kind of like getting into the teaching thing, but he really encouraged me to do that, and I'm so thankful he did, because soon after that, an opportunity came up to become a vice principal of a school that I was working at. And again, I had some strong mentors around me that encouraged me to apply and help me as I got that role and became a vice principal. We then moved to Salmon Arm in 1999 I was the vice principal there as well, and became a principal of a school, and then I started having children. So I took a lot of time off. I really wanted to be home with my kids, and I was trying to figure out what I could do while I was off with my kids, still just to have a little bit of my hand in the workforce. And I remember my husband at one point said, because prior to this, I'd always been a middle school teacher and worked with typically grade 6 and grade 7 students. And my husband had said, oh, why don't you open a daycare? And I'm like, why don't you open a daycare? Are you crazy? I'm scared of these little kids. You know, like, I knew nothing about all these little kids. But as we had our first child and then our second, and then I had friends who were really struggling in our community finding part-time daycare. They were people that were, if you wanted to get a spot in a daycare in our community, and I know this is very similar in most communities, you had to pay for a full-time spot. And I had a lot of friends that didn't want that full-time care, they just needed part-time care. So I ended up being kind of that person that people knew I was home with my kids anyways. They would phone me and say, oh, okay, Jen, you know, is it okay if I drop Josie off? It's okay if I drop Sam off? I'm like, absolutely. Then I realized, again, in a small town, there's a big network. I was getting really busy. And I was like, okay, I need to kind of legalize what's happening here. And so I became a licensed, not required, a daycare provider, and then a family daycare provider. So I opened up my home for a family daycare. And so I did that while my kids were young. So I think it was about 6 or 7 years. And I totally loved it. And so my husband and I always joke that I'm glad that he sent me in that direction, even though initially I didn't think it was the greatest idea just because I didn't have the experience in that area. So then when my kids were of school age and I thought, okay, I want to get back into the workforce, I did a lot of work in the nonprofit world in literacy. So I was using my education background and became a literacy coordinator in our community. And then that kind of morphed into an early learning coordinator position at the school district. So it's a part-time position, but what I do is I oversee all of the Strong Start programs in our community, Ready, Set, Learn, and I support families with 0 to 5 and helping them with their transition into the school system. And what I'm really thankful for is all of the community partnerships that I've connected with and made over the years just to help with that transition piece, because it's really challenging for families. The school district can be seen as quite a separate silo and not always approachable. We have a lot of families that unfortunately had negative experiences with the school system. So bridging that gap between the community programs and daycares and supports that are out there with school district staff and programs, it's been an incredible journey, and I've met some fantastic people through it, and I'm very thankful for that. So that's a little bit of my story.
Hello, my name is Cindy Page, and I live in Victoria, and I am an instructor and program chair at Northern Lights College in Fort St. John. Our program is online, and we have a face-to-face cohort, or have had over the last 2 years as well, but I've been able to live and work in Victoria. I am an early childhood educator, and I would say that my journey towards that has been I think somewhere along the line I saw what you think your life's going to be in terms of a straight line, and then what it actually is all over the place. And that's kind of what it's been for me. I started off thinking I was going to go into nursing and be in long-term care. That's where I started. And then it just sort of, it just didn't feel like the right fit for me. What I learned during the program was really important. But it wasn't clicking. And so somehow that led me into, and there's no relationship to anything here, into sales. And so I became a Tupperware salesperson and manager, and carried on that venue for a while. And then I went right after that into sales of audio and video. So it really, I had no understanding at the time what relationship that would have to anything that I would end up doing in life, but it seemed interesting at the time, and I got a lot of experience speaking to people and trying to find out what their actual needs are. And I think in sales, that's something that, as I reflect back on, there's some similarities in that vein to looking at, you know, what do students need, what do families need, what do children need. And so anyways, it's just kind of an interesting journey. But when I started to have my children of my own, oh, we lost, okay. When I started to have children of my own, then I thought about what's my next step here, and how do I give service to my children and my family. And I started with licensed not required L&R care at home. And just as you were saying, that soon, you know, out in the I got, you know, the opportunity for many families to approach me. So I became a licensed family child care operator. I can't stress enough at that point in my life the value that the child care resource and referral programs were in influencing where I moved to next. I became quite involved as a care provider and received assistance to become licensed, which was really important for me and for my journey. And as I watched what the consultants did, I asked questions about their role and what they do. And soon I became interested in child care resource and referral programs. So then it was, okay, what do you need to do to be able to do that job, right? What kind of education do you need? And so I had some strong mentors in the child care resource and referral program that said, well, if this is something you're interested in, then you should think about early childhood education and care. So that's what really sparked it. While I was doing that, I did the Family Child Care Certificate program, and then I was fortunate enough to get a position in the Child Care Resource and Referral. And that kind of carried me through for about 7 or 8 years, I guess, right? And then I moved into licensing, same kind of thing, strong mentors that really took the time to share their journey and share information about what I could do if I wanted to go into that career. My early childhood education, because we moved around a lot, was part-time, and that's how I hooked up with Northern Lights College. So I was able to move into some different communities and continue my education while I moved into the different roles. And at some point in time, I wasn't afraid to speak out and say what I was interested in, and I said to an instructor once, I want to do your job. And so she was gracious enough not to think of me as, you know, a bit of a, you know, upstart here of saying something so brash, but she provided a lot of mentorship too. And so that's really how I ended up at Northern Lights College. And when I think about the number of years in the field, it's been 28 years now, and I, you know, I can hardly believe it. So welcome everybody, and thank you very much.
We're going to have Nancy Dumais, who's calling in from Terrace. We're going to have her come up on the screen and have her present next. There she is. Hi, Nance. We're good.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy for all of you that you're at conference right now. The energy there just feels fantastic. So my name is Nancy, as we've said a couple times. I've been in the field now as an early childhood educator for 20 years. I took my ECE when I was 18 years old, right out of college, and it started as back in those days when you were in high school, you got to do a series of, I think it was called home ec, where you did a bit of sewing, a bit of cooking, and one of the courses was child development. And I really enjoyed that course. And then when it came time to do work experience, I did a variety of things. I did a work experience placement in construction, loved that. The idea of driving a digger still makes me think that one day maybe I'll do that for a job. And another placement I did was in a family daycare, and I really, really enjoyed that. But at that time, I didn't even know that there was such a thing as an early childhood educator, or that people worked in daycares as a job. So looking at potential, you know, career ideas or post-secondary ideas, I thought about going into pediatric nursing. And when I look back now, I think that would totally not have been the job for me, but I think it was because I already knew I wanted to care for children, and the idea of pediatric was the children part, and then the nursing was the care part. I now have a 16-year-old daughter who is, you know, considering post-secondary and thinking about what she wants, and sure enough, that's what she's saying, but I think she would be a much better nurse than me. She is totally fine with puke and poop and all that stuff. So anyhow, I took my ECE full-time at 18 years old, and have been working for the same organization, Paces Daycare Society here in Terrace, basically ever since. I did a year afterwards in my hometown, which is 35 minutes away, and was waiting for an opportunity to work at one of the centers here in Terrace. At the time, it was the college location, and it was deemed to be the best program in town, and that is where I wanted to do my 500 hours of work experience. So I went back home and I taught preschool in a rec center for that year, waiting for an opportunity to be hired as they used to hire 2 people per year. And I didn't get it that first year, and then I got it the second time around, and so I moved to Terrace. And I was there for a few months, and Paces Daycare posted a position here. I applied and got the job, and I've been here ever since. I left a couple of times. There were a couple of times for maternity, and then a couple of times where things just didn't feel quite right. I didn't feel like this was the best place for me, or something just didn't feel quite right. And I was fortunate at that time. We're run by a board of directors and we're unionized here. So we had the option of taking leaves of absence. So that's what I did. I'm not sure that I would have if it had meant completely quitting the job. So I feel very fortunate for that now, and I encourage my staff now to take advantage of that, because I came back every time I left. And now here I am. I've been the manager here for about 4 years, and that came on the same year that I was doing the leadership. And at that time, I was temporarily covering a manager, and I think just the way it all fell into place was another fortunate thing for me. We had applied for the leadership projects the year before, and we weren't accepted. And then the year that we were was the same year I was in this management role. So there I was doing leadership, trying out a management role, lots and lots of learning that year. And I loved it. And I don't know, I reflect on my leadership journey and that whole experience and where I am today. And maybe I would have done the things I've done since then with leadership or without leadership. I'm not too sure, but it certainly feels like a lot of that has to do with all of the things I learned that year, or, it wasn't all within a year, 18 months, I think it was. But I'm doing all kinds of crazy things that I don't think I would have done. I co-chair our local branch, and I was thinking about that this morning too. I don't even know what led me to go to a first meeting there. I don't know, if that all was at the same time or not, but I do that now. I was on the college advisory committee. I was on the provincial ECEBC board, and also I think those things are due to mentorship and, nominations from people who see that leadership in you, or that courage, or that spark. So a thank you to all those people who encouraged me to be a part of those things. Recently, our town, or our city, that same college childcare center that I wanted to do that 500 hours of work experience, closed their doors this past January. And I was called to a meeting from the, I guess he's the president, or I'm not sure exactly what his title was, but I was called to a meeting and I wasn't sure why I was going, and I went with the chair of our board here, so my boss, and he wanted us to take on the children that they had closed the doors on. So they were giving families, I think it was about 6 weeks or 5 weeks, and then they were closing the doors. And our center is the only licensed infant toddler center in town. And so he had 12 toddlers that were going to be looking for spaces, and we had a wait list already, so he knew they were going to have nowhere to go. and he wanted us to take them on. We would have loved to, but we didn't have the capacity. We were already full. We already had a wait list. So we were sitting there through this meeting, and he's telling us this story, and I had all kinds of feelings. I was sad for those families. I was frustrated that things hadn't gone in a way that I felt was, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but you know, I had sort of seen that program struggling over the last 5 years, and I felt like there was suggestions or guidance that I could offer, and it had been turned down many times. Anyways, all of a sudden I found myself saying, we'll take over, we'll do this, we'll rescue this program. And it was crazy. I don't even know why it came out of my mouth. I never intended to go there and say all those things, but the chair of my board is looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and he's thinking the same thing. And it was just like all in, you know, seconds. All of a sudden there I was saying, I'm going to open a second center. Never in a million years would I have thought that that was going to happen. Just like everywhere else, we're short ECEs. And there I was saying I was going to open a second location. So anyhow, now I manage 2 centers all under one board, and I go back and forth, and I have amazing staff, and it's crazy, and it's such a leadership role that I wouldn't be doing, I don't think, if it wasn't for ECEBC and all the education that came with being part of 5th cohort, and all of the mentors that I've had. And yeah, that's kind of where I am now, from where I was, you know, at one point, I think right before I did the assistant management position, or maybe right after, I had gone and taken a job working at a medical building as answering phones, because I wasn't sure this was the place for me. So pretty big stuff has been happening since I've taken on that leadership project 4 or 5 years ago. So that's me.
Thanks, Nancy. Okay, well, Leola.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leola McMillan. And please bear with me, I have lost my voice as well earlier this week and recovering from a bad cough. So if I sound not too well, just bear with me. So I am from Vernon, and I have been an early childhood educator for 25 years. And I started out as a preschool assistant when my children were younger. And I was just so taken with that I thought, this is what I want to do. I wanted a meaningful job, and thoroughly enjoyed it. So started out as preschool assistant, then worked my way up to family childcare. And family childcare got too busy, so I opened up a group program, and then we moved. So I went ahead and just worked in programs in infant toddler and 3 to 5s, and I really enjoyed that. So I did that for 25 years in childcare. Then 8 years ago, we moved to Vernon. So right away, I joined the branch, the local branch of ECEBC. I just really wanted to connect with educators in my community, and was very happy to meet Lynn Reside, who became my fabulous mentor over the years. She has taught me so much and guided me, and she really inspired me. And that came at a time for me because I was looking for more out of my profession. After all of the programs that I've worked in, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, loved working with children, but I was still looking for more. I needed some different meaning. I felt the need just to re-examine myself as an early childhood educator. So I became very involved in my branch, and now, as of last year, I became chair, which is a big step for me. And at that same time, the opportunity came to join the first new virtual leadership cohort, which has been profound for me in exploring my values and my beliefs and what I really am looking for in my career. And it has reignited me, and it has got me excited again about wanting to keep in the field and to really make a difference. So, so that's what brought me here today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Leanne Mavidi, and I'm with the Vernon chapter, but I live in Armstrong. And my journey into childcare started many moons ago with my first child. I was the typical, we used to live in the Lower Mainland, I was the typical corporate parent, had the job downtown Vancouver at a big accounting firm, and we had moved into Surrey and I needed a new daycare for my son. I had only experienced little family daycares up to that point, and I was very lucky to get into a brand new purpose-built center in Surrey, which was right by the SkyTrain, and that opened my eyes to that there was a different type of childcare out there. And I found that after about 6 months or so, I was thinking that my favorite parts of the day were those little bits of time when I dropped my son off in the morning and I picked him up at the end of the day. And I was really intrigued by these girls' jobs. And I had no idea what an ECE was. I'd never heard the term before until I met these girls and they were telling me about this stuff. And I was like, oh, wow. And it really opened my eyes. And then I had to make a decision because I was supposed to enroll to become an accountant. And with talking to my husband, he's like, well, what's this ECE thing you keep babbling about? And so I said, you know what, I don't really know, but I'm just so drawn to it that I'm not taking the accounting program. He's like, what? But with some talk, and he came and met the girls more at the daycare, I said, you start doing drop-off and pickups and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's just something, there's something. And he was really good at understanding that you have to do what you're passionate about, not what will, just be a job. And so he said, okay, if this is what you need to do, then do it. He bought me a camper. We set it up in our front yard, and that was my office. And I took the full-time program in Langley and got my ECE. And after that, I was lucky to get a job in a daycare that had all the age groups. It had the 3 to 5, the infant, toddler, and preschool and everything. So I was lucky in one spot. I was able to see everything that was out there that I hadn't experienced with my kids. And it opened my eyes that, wow, this is actually a really big field. There is more to it than just the little daycare in somebody's home. And so it's been a bit of a journey, this experiencing working in a couple of different centers in the Lower Mainland. And then we had talked about opening up a family daycare in our home. And so we had bought a house in Maple Ridge to do this all in. And then my husband passed suddenly from an illness. And I was like, dear Lord, I'm alone. And what do I do? And in the new town, I was like, I didn't have a job because we were supposed to be opening up my own center. That ECE saved my butt, totally. I found this nice little center who was hiring, and the lady was very gracious. And she just brought me into this little world. And I was like, wow, this is what I was looking for, because they were supportive people and the families were great. And I'm like, I just love this so much. And she taught me a lot there. And then my mom and I decided to move to the Okanagan, which was the best move ever that I could have ever done. And I started working at a great center, which was, Lynn was at the head of the, and I learned so much working there because I was exposed to many different programs and philosophies and styles. And I just really saw what was out there and started coming to conference and just really seeing what was out there in this great big world. And then I moved on to a different style of little center after 5 years, and I had discovered infant toddler care, and I went back to school and got my infant toddler. And that's where I really found a passion, was with that age group. And I worked there for probably 5 years. And also I was on our local chapter of ECEBC and just really found like how much professional people are out there, and got to see so many different ways of doing things, and just really bit into finding my own philosophy and my own ethics and all that kind of stuff. And then I got the bite that through seeing these people that have developed big centers, and another lady that I worked with who started her own center and stuff, I was like, you know what? I can do this too. It doesn't matter that it's just me on my own. I have fabulous colleagues that I have become friends with that can support me, give me information. And so now I have that. I did it. I opened my own little center, which followed along at the same time that the leadership was coming up. And I thought, you know what? I'll take that and see where that helps me in my journey to explore different things and meet new people. And it was great. We had these calls where everybody would be together on the phone or the webinars, and just talking to different people in the different parts of the province and hearing their stories. And that it's like, okay, we're all the same. It doesn't matter where we live. We all had the same kind of feelings, and that just made me feel like I can do this. So now I'm on year 1.5 of having my own little center, and it's going great. And I've been able to really explore how I want my center to run, what was important to me, and how to keep myself strong instead of just killing myself over pleasing everybody else. I mean, I went into it first, I wanted to be, you know, I'm open 5:30 or 7:30 to 5:30 every day, Monday to Friday. And I was like, after the first 6 months, I was like, wow, that's too much. And I pondered for a while, like, how am I going to help myself? Because like I couldn't hire anybody. I tried really hard to hire someone. And there was just no ECs that wanted to come to Armstrong to work in a little tiny center. And so I thought, I have to do something for myself before I burn out and I'm no good to anybody. So I made the leap of faith, and I explained to my families that I was moving to 4 days a week. I was so paranoid to do that. And they actually backed me. They said it's awesome. They all had a grandparent or someone who could take on the 1 day a week. And I was like, wow. So through this little bit of journey with leadership and everything, I've learned I can spread my wings. It's a little scary, but there's great people around me that support me, and my journey is continuing. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Courtney DeYoung, and I'm from Vernon as well. I've been in ECE for about 6 or 7 years. I've been on our local branch for about 4 or 5, and this is actually my first year on the provincial board. So it's been quite a year of journeying for me. This time last year, I said yes to being on the board, and I was terrified, but I had some amazing mentors who pushed me in the right direction, and it's been the best decision that I've ever made. Shortly after that, I said yes to the leadership cohort, which again, I kind of jumped in wholeheartedly, not really thinking about how that would work out and how much time I would have after that. But again, it was the best decision that I've ever made. I feel like I've grown so much as a leader. I've met some really amazing women along the way, and it's been really amazing. I never thought last year that I would be sitting on a panel or leading a workshop today, but here I am, and it's terrifying. I'm super nervous, but it's super empowering to be able to share my story and share bits and pieces and hope that one day that it inspires somebody. I know for me, last year, we did a puzzle activity where we had to write quotes on, and anytime that I was nervous or scared or wasn't sure about what I was doing, I would look at those quotes and it just kept pushing me forward. So I wanted to share those with you quickly. One of them was grow through what you go through and be fearless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. And it's been those quotes that have just kept me going and kept me inspired to know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And this is all just part of my journey. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, guys. It's quite a diverse array of stories, and I I think that as early child educators, we certainly have the capacity to change lives. But when I hear stories like this, I reflect that early child education has the capacity to change our life. And I think it certainly has for our panelists, and I think for you as well. So we have some questions prepared, but we would like to know if there's anyone in the audience that might have a question, general question, or for one of our panelists.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sharon Nazar, ECE from the Kootenays. Thank you, everyone, for sharing today. My question is to Jennifer. So I understand you work with the school board and in early learning. I think I'm a school board trustee, so I have an opportunity to work with trustees, and I'm finding that there's such a disconnect from the understanding of where learning actually begins for children. I keep hearing that we need to transition them, get them ready to learn for kindergarten. And it just takes so much conversation to say, well, do you actually think children to start to learn when they walk into the kindergarten classroom? Or is that just language we've gotten so used to that we actually think that way? When issues come up at my board about early learning, there's confusion. They talk about early learning being able to read from K to 3. And I keep asking, what are we talking about when we're talking about early learning? They struggle to answer that question for me. So my question to you is, what can we as early childhood educators do to try to bridge that gap so that children do not have to transition, so that it's a seamless learning that happens for them from birth through university?
Thank you.
And after that, can I just have a comment as well?
Okay. So yeah, I'll try to answer your question. What we've been doing in our school district, and we've really seen a shift, I would say over the last 7 to 8 years. When we used to welcome kids into school, we were still focusing on the traditional ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, that kind of academic learning piece. But we know through research and talking with our ECE partners and our early learning partners that that's not the case, that we all need to be working together. And we've really formed community teams. Our district is very large geographically, so we have 5 early years tables in our big community. And so I sit as the school district representative on all 5 tables. And from those tables, we really put together teams that include the early years coordinator. So it's a community-based coordinator. They have early learning service providers, so people that are on the ground in the field. We bring in kindergarten teachers. We bring in school principals and myself and parents. So that a lot of it is just really that education piece, and I'm sure a lot of you as ECEs, see this in your own centers when you have parents that really want you to do worksheets for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and want their kids to be getting computer games to learn their words and alphabet, and we know that it's not developmentally appropriate at those young age levels, yet parents often feel the pressure if they see another child who's able to do those skills, and they feel that they need to catch up. So I think in answer to your question, the biggest thing is just forming those community connections and having conversations and having that understanding of what healthy child development looks like. A big thing that we rely on and use as a springboard in our district is EDI data, which for the decision makers up top, lots of times we can have wonderful stories about the impact that we have on children and families, but sometimes those decision makers, they need that data. And that's a really good conversation starter because it focuses on the social emotional development and the gross and fine motor skills and communication, all those skills that are so important in child development, and not looking at those traditional learning pieces that school districts used to be associated to. So I'm not sure if that helps, but.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I agree with you. It's the education piece. And so how do we do that? Because often our voices are not heard. So my challenge to you all, I heard it from the panel sitting up there. Many of you are here now because you wanted more. What's the next step? What else can we do? Elections are coming up this fall. You can run and be a school board trustee. There's a lot of work to be done. And you can as well continue to be an early childhood educator. You can still work in the field part-time. I'm a Strong Start facilitator and I'm a school board trustee. So think about it. I think that we need to have this conversation at those tables more. Thank you.
Anyone else? I could take a jar question. Oh, we have one right up here, Sonia. Thank you. I just want to put my hand in this nice jar.
Hi, ladies. So I'm wondering, now that you're here standing up there as the panel, what's your next step in leadership? What's something that you want to take on?
Maybe each of you could just say one thing that maybe the direction that you're heading. Cindy?
Okay, so that's commitment time, Katrina. Thank you. Well, I think for me, a very needed next step is to reconnect with the local ECEBC branch. I moved to the community just recently. Well, that's a fib. It's 3 years now. But somehow those 3 years have gone by. But I was active in the Nanaimo branch when I lived there for a number of years. And so coming to Victoria, it's taken me a little bit longer. And I was just recently at an event hosted or sponsored by, and so really valued that next step. And it's a reminder of how that everyday connection and networking with each other is so important in helping us to stay vibrant and passionate about the work that we do.
I would have to say for myself, it's to dive back into my work. I've taken a step back for the last couple of years just to do my self-reflection, and I've reaffirmed what I believe in. So for me now, it's time to get really involved in my work. And also through the leadership work that I've been doing is to build on the connections that I've been making and make that work for my community.
I guess for myself, with just having a new business in Armstrong, I worked 10 years in Vernon, so now I'm kind of establishing myself. And granted, I live in Armstrong, but a new community in a business sense. And I'm finding that I think there's a need to kind of unite all the daycares that are in Armstrong. There's not a lot of people that are networking together. They just kind of built their own little thing, and I'd like to try to make everybody kind of come together in a business sort of way. I'm sad to say I think I'm the only ECEBC member in Armstrong. So I'm going to advocate. And yeah, just see where that goes. I'll start with some small steps. I don't want to be pushy.
For me, I think it's continuing my work on the provincial board and trying to keep reaching out to members around the province, and kind of like what Leanne was saying, working with our own board and trying to reach those smaller communities like Armstrong and Enderby and Lumbee, and trying to reach all those smaller towns and connect them and help us to all feel more connected and more united in what we're all doing, because we're all ECEs. We just work in different fields, and helping everybody to see that.
Nancy, did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. So for me, with all of these changes provincially, I think that my sort of next step, or maybe it's something I've already started, would just be to continue to support educators in whether or not it's returning to the field or entering the field, and just doing anything I can to encourage us to have more educators as we go through these changes with the government and with everything that ECEBC is doing for our profession. that's where I'd like to, spend some energy over the next little while.
Thanks, Nancy. Jen?
Is this on? Oh, thank you. One of the initiatives that we have been invited to participate in this year is the Changing Results for Young Children with the work through Maureen Dockendorf. So we're quite excited because, again, that's a really good opportunity for us to make those connections with our early learning providers in our communities and our school districts, just to really support those connections. So that's where I'm headed.
That was a really good question. Thanks for asking. I think we're slowly running out of time, but I know that everyone has lanyards with their names on them all weekend, and we have lots of time for networking. So if you wanted to have a conversation with any of our panelists or for Lynn or anyone else for that matter, just approach. This is a perfect time. We are taking over the hotel. So anyone that you come and chat, take advantage of that and meet up with people and ask them about them and share your story as well. So I just want to say thank you very much to the panel. So please join me in, because I know this was a scary thing. It is scary, and I think they did a fabulous job. So thank you, everybody.